Welcome, everyone. I'm your presenter. My name is Karen Farley. I'm a documentation manager at Sylvan. I also work on some features and functions and testing. And today we're going to talk about hidden gems of Stratum, features you may not be using. And there's about 5 topics I'll cover. I'll go through some slides first, and then we'll jump to a live demonstration. But the topics we'll be covering today include favorite and recent views, something called the Stratum Glossary, Stratum Viewer functions for setting up calculations, as well as a window to help manage measures of either calculated type or regular, visual alerts, which are known as conditional formatting, which you can apply to columns in your views, as well as something called the Stratum Broadcast Manager, which is used to send out analysis alerts for conditions and views from your environment. So I'll cover those, show a demo, and then we'll open up the webinar today for questions, showing contact information, and where you can find more resources on these class topics. Jumping right into the topic of favorites, actually this kind of in a broader topic is how do you find your views? How do you get to your views? And how do you organize them? So you can certainly use there's a left panel in Stratum Viewer, which you can navigate through and find what you're looking for, but some shortcuts, which I'll show today, are using the View Search feature, marking frequently used views as your favorites, and there's a separate tab in the left panel where you can retrieve them, as well as working from recently visited views, which are tracked automatically for you. Up to 30 at a time are tracked in a recents panel, also on the left-hand panel in Stratum Viewer. So all of these help you reduce repeated searching for commonly used or frequently used reports in Viewer. Administrators can actually organize views into your view groups, and that's what you see when you look at the All tab in the left panel. But you can actually adjust some things with your recents and favorites. Again, Stratum automatically tracks your most recent 30 views for you, but you can, for example, remove a view from a favorite, remove a view from recents, tag it as a favorite, and then you can also organize things for your favorites, like change the order, remove things, add things to that list. So it's kind of your go-to list of frequently used views, shortcut to get to versus navigating from the All tab. I'm also going to talk about the Stratum Glossary, which is a repository of definitions for what is contained in your data hub. So your measures, your dimensions, levels, other important things. All of this information, and this image on the right is an example of a glossary definition, which I pulled up from a view. There are small information icons which can be clicked to access these definitions. And all of them are intended to help improve your understanding of what's in your Stratum reports and your data model. For example, does actual sales include or exclude return, or include or account for returns or not? So those types of definitions are helpful for users. And you can explore them from, as I said, the icons in your views or from a main menu in Stratum Viewer. Something else to know about the Stratum Glossary, it is searchable, and I'll show that in my demonstration. Administrators should take the time to customize glossary definitions, and there is a video out on YouTube, also attached to Stratum Help, which helps guide administrators through updating definitions, customizing them to your environment. They're not generic definitions that aren't as useful to the customized ones. Individuals can actually, when you're creating calculations in your views, you can set up definitions for those specific custom calculations in your views, and I'll point that out during my demo as well. I'll talk about and show you shortcuts for common calculations, setting them up in Stratum Viewer. So I'll show this window during my demonstration, but we have provided a set of Stratum Viewer functions, and they're nice shortcuts to common KPIs you might have in a view, like a difference or achievement percent, percent of change, percent of total. What's also convenient is there's divide with zero check function, and that's divide with zero check is also built into other custom functions that we provide that involve division. So if you have your data ends up where the dividing number would be a 0 into some other number, we want to avoid you having a return of an error message or an error text in your columns in your view. So divide with zero check is like, oh, don't do that dividing don't do the division in this case because I'd be dividing by 0, and that's not a good thing to have in my view. So that's a nice convenient thing to have, this separate divide with 0 check in case you're setting up something custom with division. Any other of our custom viewer functions that involve division have that built into it. So you would pick your function, and then I'll show you, you'll pick the measure items to fill in the pre-provided formula for those custom calculations. And when I show you those calculated shortcuts for calculations, I'm also going to point out my measure items window, or the viewer's measure items window. It's a really convenient spot to get a bird's eye view of everything, all your measures in a view. So both visible and hidden can be looked at from this window. There's links to add new calculated and regular measure items. You can drag and drop to rearrange. You can hide or display. You can also copy an existing one as a shortcut for starting a new measure item. So those are some convenient features if you're adding measure items or adjusting measure items in your view. And you can pull up editing windows for all the existing ones as well if you want to change something like a time range or add a fill color to the column that contains that data. The other topics I'm going to talk about, some of these are controlled by administrators, but any user would see them in the view if they're in place. So I think it's helpful to know what these features are in case you see them and know there are some customization options for advanced users in this case, conditional formats. So let me back up here and just talk about conditional formats. So in this image here in the bottom right, this column has conditional formatting applied, which brought in visual icons and color formatting, color shading to help point out conditions that were either good or bad or worth investigating in terms of current month % of total calculation. You can build a library of conditional formats that then users can apply to their views. You can add custom one-off conditional formats, expressions, formatting to a view and not save that as part of your overall library. Advanced users can add personal conditional formats. Administrators can set up global and personal conditional formats. So global ones will be globally available if they're part of your library to someone who is trying to add a conditional format to one of their views. Examples of when you might want to use a conditional format. Maybe you want to monitor sales above or below a budgeted goal, or track higher than expected cost if you're looking at your cost of inventory or purchasing. And then the final topic I'll cover today, and I am kind of moving through these slides a little quickly, but we will post this recording of class to YouTube, Sylvan's YouTube channel. So you can come back and browse through these bullets at your leisure if you want more information. So there's a concept of Stratum Broadcast Manager, which administrators use to deliver Stratum reports, usually by email, on demand to users or on a scheduled basis. So administrators will have a set of analyst tools that includes something called Action, Broadcast Group, and Broadcast Schedule, which I'll get into here in a minute. But you may be on the receiving end of these emails that are generated by this functionality. So administrators can control when it's done, when the reports are generated and the emails are sent out to users, and they can also just on the fly initiate a sharing of an action at any time. Examples of emailed reports you might get through this functionality. Maybe your administrator will distribute weekly sales updates or send month-end inventory reports, or they might have more frequently issued emailed alerts, things that track open orders and current inventory levels. So some of your views that might have conditional formatting on them to help indicate, oh, here's something to watch, here's some good results, here's some, oh, not so sure about these results, or here's some conditions in inventory we should know about. Maybe those are sent out more frequently just so people can make sure they're keeping track of those conditions. When you get an emailed report from Stratum Broadcast Manager, it will look something like this image on the left, depending on how it's been set up. So in this case, the alert was set up to include links to some views, as well as an Excel file that includes that view data. There's a couple options to get to that data. And this may be a lot of views in the real world. Maybe you're not attaching 5 views to one single email. But in this case, I did. I had some inventory things that I wanted to be tracking and sent out to myself. as well as that, administrators can configure things so that they can be alerted when notification emails are sent out, or when your alerts are sending out these emails to your recipients. So in the image here on the right, tells me that something completed for the Stratum Broadcast Manager, emails or links to views were sent out to the recipients. So just to keep on top of what's happening and when. So that's a helpful tool for administrators. A couple other points about Broadcast Manager. I said there's 3 pieces to this. Overall, Broadcast Manager is part of, if you look at this image of our data hub, data coming in and out of the data hub, in this lower right corner is where Stratum Broadcast Manager lives. So there's a Stratum Access Hub license that's required for these features to be initiated or implemented in an environment. But there's 3 major pieces to it. So there's actions, and those are what you would attach 1 or more views to that your administrator is trying to share with people on an emailed out or file sharing basis. And then you can use broadcast groups. They can use broadcast groups to group together actions. So maybe you have 2 or 3 actions related to inventory, or 2 or 3 related to accounts payable, accounts receivable. Maybe you group the inventory ones into 1 broadcast group. Each of those actions may be going out to different users, but you can group them together for ease of scheduling or for processing. And then there's something called a broadcast schedule. So this identifies broadcast groups that are sharing the same processing or delivery timing. In Stratum Viewer, you're just really grouping together things, identifying what goes together when you're scheduling it. But outside of Viewer is where you would process when you would, or schedule when you would process this broadcast schedule or broadcast group or action. Individually, you could initiate any of these 3 things on the fly from the Viewer interface, but behind the scenes, you can also schedule to process either an action, broadcast group, or schedule. The schedule will be most likely what's being scheduled for processing because it contains your broadcast groups and then the actions within those groups. So that's done via scheduled task or a script. I won't show that technical side today, but at least show you what those components are and what it would look like to attach a view to an action to a group, and a group to a schedule. So let's jump over to a demo, and let me switch screens here and show you our environment. So what we're looking at here is one of our Stratum environments, and I'm going to start by talking about the search feature, favorites, and recents. So you may or may not have used the search feature, but I'll just show it in the top of Stratum Viewer. You can search for things by view names, and then you would get a set of results that come back from the view list window. So I've got quite a few views here. If I was an administrator, I might be saying, oh, I've got a few that are by year-to-date product category. Maybe I can combine those, but I'm just running this view. Which one do I want to look at? Do I want to run it and then have to rerun the research if it's not the right view? Instead, we have a shortcut. So let's say I pick year-to-date product category or year-to-date sales. Let's see if this is the view that I want. There is a run in a new tab option, so I don't have to skip out of my search and I have to come back to it. It will just run this view in a new tab, and I can check if that's the view that I meant to run or the view that I'm trying to find. If you had less results and you knew for sure, yep, that's the view that I want to look at, then you could just pick it and run it, and your search results would go away. I'm actually going to run something from my favorites panel. So off onto the left, I've got a view called year-to-date sales comparison. Actually, that was the one I ran for my search. Sorry about that. Let's pick a different one. So this is just an example of one of my views that I marked as a favorite. So if you ever look at this star at the top of a view next to the view name, that's one way to control adding or removing something from favorites. If the star is yellow, then it's a favorite already. If it's gray, then you could click it and then it becomes a favorite. There are options in your favorites to move things around. So you just kind of click, drag up and down, and it would reorder your favorites. You can also right click. You could remove a favorite this way. If you didn't have that view actively up in Viewer, you could rename it. Renaming a favorite just impacts the name that displays in your favorites panel. It doesn't affect the name that shows or the base name for the view itself. Again, here you could do the run in new tab option. Let's just do one of those. Oops, I did both. So there's my run in a new tab if I didn't want to impact the view that I already had open. Again, declick, that's another way to remove it. Unclick is another way to remove your favorites from your favorites panel. On the recents side of thing, you can't necessarily rearrange them. We're just tracking in chronological order your last 30 views. If you had ran some that were older than last week, 2 weeks ago, it would show in an older folder. You can, in this case, you can remove things from your recents. Let's say you ran a few views and you don't want them tracked in your recents because you want to make room for others. You can remove them, and you can then add, if it's not already a favorite, you can add a recent to your favorites tab, and then it'll show up over in your favorites tab. So that's a quick look at favorites, recents, searching for views. Let's jump into the Data Hub, your Stratum Glossary, and definitions for your Data Hub. So we'll just go ahead and start from this view. If you don't see these blue icons in the view, which are a way to get to the glossary, there's a more info toggle off to the right. So I'm not seeing them. Want to see those icons to get to the glossary, just toggle that on. You can also access the glossary from the top, the menu at the top of viewer, but going in from the view helps you be specific to that view that you're working from versus going to the glossary and then searching for what you want to look at. But I'll show you a search still, but let's just look at clicking product brand. So here's my definition. Administrators will see this little pencil icon where they can click that and customize or add to adjust a definition. What you can also do is toggle on other details, which is nice. You can see definitions for other pieces of information that are in your view. Right now, my glossary is filtered by view availability. If I toggled that off, I would see a lot more pieces of information for everything that exists. And I'm seeing that there are definitions that I need to customize as an administrator. Some of them have been customized already, some still need to be. So that's the definition for product brand. You can also do the same for these attributes. And I could have gotten there from the window I was previously in. Looking at that definition was in that previous window that I shared for product brand. Looking at the individual brands or members for this level, you will actually see attribute relationship values or attribute relationships and the value for that particular brand, in this case, brand 4. So I can get manager information. Some of our levels have a lot more attribute relationships, some have less, but this is a nice overview of the definition as well as the values tied back to each attribute relationship for this level and this particular brand. When it comes to measures, you can click as well, and here's an example of a definition for a measure. Again, you can toggle on details if there's other measures to look at. I don't have other ones being used in the view. The rest are calculations or all based on actual sales amount. And then speaking of definitions for custom calculations, so I've got a couple columns in here, 3, that are calculations that I'd set up using my Stratum viewer functions. I did not assign a specific definition to them, which I should do. So I could go in here as an administrator and type in a custom definition that describes what this represents in the view. I won't assign this random string of text here, but you could have a definition saying this is the percent of total growth from comparing last year's sales to this year's sales, for example, would be a nice definition to type in for this calculation. And then once you save it, every time the user comes back, let's just do a save. Every time the user of this view comes back, then they'll be able to pull up that definition. I also wanted to show you a way to search in the glossary. Let's just go right back in. Hidden, or you can toggle on, is a glossary index. This shows every single thing in your glossary, and you can hover over and it tells you this is an attribute relationship, click on it and see its definition. But you can also narrow things down a bit. So let's say I want to look for budget calculations. So I type in budget, pick calculation, and now it's narrowed down of what I'm searching for. In this case, let's hide that. I get the full definition for this calculation, which is budget amount frozen calculation. And here too, you can toggle details on or toggle them back off. So that kind of covers our Stratum Glossary, quick introduction and highlighting of those features. Let's jump into Stratum Viewer functions and the Measure Manager window. Let's close out one of these views. So in this environment, I've already set up a couple definitions or a couple custom calculations using the Stratum Viewer functions. I've got cumulative percent of total, which I set up with let's just double click it, with the Stratum Viewer function. So in that function list, I have cumulative percent of total. And then when I clicked on this, I then had to go back and choose to fill in the data that was required for this calculation. So let's just quickly do that again. Cumulative percent of total. And it was, I believe, actual sales. So it fills in the expression for me. And you can also adjust the caption, which I've already done here, either typing it in or going to a specific window. You could change the format. You could assign a fill color. Let's do that. But the main thing is I just use this function shortcut. Let's do that, see if I applied that correctly. You could also, I don't think I assigned this, I did assign this a definition, good. So when I created that custom calculation using the Stratum Viewer functions, I then saved the view and then came into this definition and gave it a more specific definition than just one that says this is a new data item. Let me go back into that window for a minute here for where those custom Stratum Viewer functions were at. If you're curious about setting up the different types using these shortcuts, there's an examples link, which will take you to help topics, which give you some examples for setting up things like percent of change, percent of total, counting certain members, like how many products have sales. So it's a nice shortcut to use if you're setting up some of these common calculations in one of your views. I also wanted to show you, let me go into another view. This view has a custom calculation showing me how my actual sales compared to my forecasted sales. And I do have a conditional formatting applied to color certain ranges. But I wanted to look at this view to show you that measure management window. So you can click this button 1, 2, 3 at the top. And this shows me all the measure items, regular or calculated, in my current view. Let me see if there's any hidden ones. I do have a couple hidden ones. I could go ahead and make those visible, or I could hide other ones. I want to leave those visible though. I could, if I wanted to adjust some of the formatting on one of these, I could go ahead and see baseline forecast. Again, assign a color to it from this window. And then I could also rearrange things if I want to do a drag and drop. I'm going to show you a copy shortcut. So let's say I have actual sales. I want to get some return information in there. So I'm copying the properties of actual sales, and all I have to do is say return units. So I pick the measure and it retains all those other properties. And then that shows up in my view. And let's say I want to move it to the end. And then OK. And now my view is updated with that fill color change, some of the things that I unhid, and also the new measure that I set up via copy. I also wanted to show you a couple more, I guess, pieces, and it looks like we're about 5 minutes out from our planned end time, but if you can hang on and stay and join us for the rest, that'd be great. If not, again, you'll see the recording of this posted to Sylvan's YouTube channel and the Sylvan website. But I have to cover a few examples of conditional formatting and then actions, and broadcast groups, broadcast schedules. So let's jump into conditional formatting, which I've pointed out a little bit as we've gone through some other demo pieces. But here's an example of some conditional formatting that is showing up in a few columns. I've got this column where dark blue points out where I don't have sales. So void is no sales happening. I've got this column, some red, yellow indicators. There's also some green for some ranges that I'm monitoring for what was the percent of change between last year's sales and this year's sales to date. So let's just show you Actually, let me quickly show you the library of conditional formats that my administrator set up. It's under a Manage Things menu, which administrators can look through. And then there's a conditional format option. So I've got quite a big library. Maybe there's something custom that I want to set up for myself. I can do that, or I can apply one of these existing ones to one of my views. So this was, let's say, percent of total. This conditional format was set up by giving it a name, a description of the conditions that it's monitoring. So I'm looking at sales that are above 10% are great, between 5 and 10 are okay. Below that, there's some concern. So there are conditions that I set up. I assigned it, I want to monitor green with a green circle is great if it's sales greater than or equal to 10%. Yellow and a yellow icon if it was that 5% to 10% range, and all else was the red. So as you set things up, you can add or remove your conditions and then use an icon window to navigate to different symbols for your condition that you're monitoring, as well as some formatting. So you can format the color of the cell, the text style. If it's set to the viewer default, you can deselect that and then pick something different, a different color, for example, or a different font effect like italic or bold. I'm going to leave things as is, but that's your library of things, which is really managed by your administrator. Let me go back into that view. Customer product void. So this is an example where we've got a few different types of indicators. There's also one, I think this one uses something similar, that percent of total conditional format, but there's one that was set up with different icons instead of just circles. There's some arrows up and down conditions. Now this does not have it, but I think if there's a definition applied to this conditional format, you can create hover text that shows you what those conditions are that are being monitored. Let's see if this one, if it doesn't have it, then I'll set one up. But right-clicking and choosing conditional format is when you're using a view, how you can get to conditional formats that have been set up. So this is a custom one. If I go into select, then I could go into my library of conditional formats and pick one. I'm going to stick with my custom one, but I'm going to give it a definition so I can show you what I mean with applying a definition for conditions. So I'm not going to apply all of them, but I'll just say green is, and let's say I would have that in there. Yellow is, and it would give me what that range was. Red, all else. So in this case, it's looking like, I think it's like 30%, 25% rankings of the different sales monitoring. Sorry for that typo, but just doing that quickly so I can show you what I wanted to demonstrate with this column. So if you look at the properties for this measure item, you've got a conditional format that's applied, rank by percent of total. The pop-up expression, now that I have a description, it should show, but let's set this to no for example purposes. So now it's no, there's no pop-up expression, but if I set it to yes, like it was, then I can pick things like in the pop-up, if I hover over that value, I can show the measure item value, caption, the rules of the conditional format. So I'm going to do that. I can also only show the value or not show the value in that column. So I could hide these percentages and just show the icons if I wanted to. But in that case, in my pop-up expression, I should pick to show the value as well. So there's some way for someone to look at what does this red or yellow icon represent. So I'll leave those values shown. But here's, if you can see my pop-up definition, the value is, I think I picked the wrong thing. I picked the rule. Let me pick the description there. That's what I wanted. The description. So now when I apply that, I can see everything that is red or green or yellow. What does that represent? If I did the value, I'll just quickly show what that represents. And you can do more than the value. You could do value, description, multiple things, but I'm just showing you one at a time. Let's say no to the value. So here's a more leaner presentation of this column, but if I hover over it, I can see what the value is behind this, this icon. I'll go into one view really quickly and show you one more, applying something fresh, because these are already applied. I'll show you something I haven't applied yet. So my year-to-date sales comparison, total metrics. There's no conditional formats here. Let's go ahead and apply one from my existing library. I want to highlight negative values in red. If I'm not sure what that represents, there's this arrow in this window which can show me the values or the conditions and what formatting or icons might exist for this conditional format. So that's applied and in place. And again, you could set up your own custom one if you wanted to by just going into conditional format, edit, and custom if you didn't find one from this list of existing libraries of conditional formats. Let me just go back and see percent of total, what that would look like. Percent of total. I don't know if these conditions are a good match for my view results, but let's see. Oh, that's decent. So now I've got a ranking of, here's the good percent of total amounts, here's some that might be concerning, and here's some that are not so bad. So kind of a quick look at conditional formats. Again, you can set up custom ones per view. Those will not be saved as part of the overall library. The library conditional formats are set up from that manager window, going into conditional formatting and clicking the plus sign to start fresh and adding conditions as you go, picking your icons and your formatting. Now we can get to the actions and broadcast groups, broadcast schedules. Let's go ahead and move out of that. So I've mentioned if you're an administrator, you'll be seeing the opportunity or the options for controlling actions, broadcast groups, broadcast schedules from this Analyst Tools menu. If you're an everyday user, I believe advanced users may be able to add views to actions from their views for their pop-up menu. So I can show you that, but I'll just briefly point out there are other ways to share views that don't have to be delivered on a regular basis. You could right-click the name, click share, click copy. So if you have some one-off opportunities where it's not like I need to send this out every week, just want to I'm setting up a view, I want to share it with someone, you could do that right-click and share. You can also email an individual view from this email icon or export it to Excel and share from there. But actions and broadcast groups and schedules are really helpful for repeat sharing of one or more views or reports on a regular basis. So you don't have to go in every day or every week and pick the views you want to share manually. You use those actions, broadcast groups, and broadcast schedules. And there are a lot of help topics about this functionality, which I'm covering pretty quickly here. I believe we also have another insight class that was done in previous months on specifically on just actions, broadcast groups, and broadcast schedules if you want to learn a little bit more about it. But I'd like to show you how I've put something into a view into an action, and then I'll kind of go into individual pieces of how to set things up. Let me go over to this view. So let's say I've got this view that I want to put into an action. I want to just put it into one that already exists. So there's a nice shortcut available for that. If you right-click in your view, you'll see actions. You can add a new action, add this view to an existing one, or see if the view is already part of an action. It's not, so I'm going to just go ahead and add it to one. Action, add view to existing action. I'm going to pick sales versus budgets week to date randomly, just assign it to this one for now, but there'd be a more logical approach to this in deciding what views you want to send out via actions. So let's go ahead and add that. It tells me that I'll confirm, yes, I want to add that. And we'll exit out of there. And then I'll show you what that action looks like behind the scenes. So going into my actions window, that was sales versus budget weeks to date that I just set up. So actions have names. You can give them a description. You choose who these the views via email are sent out to. In this case, I've got 2 users who are going to receive this action. They'll get an Excel file attached to that email, a single one, whether or not there's multiple views. They'll have a single Excel file with tabs for each views in this case. I can have it be where it retains the formatting in that that view. So if there's special conditional formatting or color, fill of color, that will retain it, or just do the bare bones data. Don't worry about the formatting. So you've got some options there. And then you can set up a subject body for the email. You want to include the links to the views that are attached to the actions, yes or no. Send the email even if the views don't have any data in them, or have a special prefix if there is no data, so there's no view. So here's that view that I just attached to that action for you, that shortcut that I showed you. If you wanted to add more, delete some, there's these little icons you can use to add things. You can search for views and then pick a view and add it to the action. This one does not, this action is not attached to a broadcast group at this time. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to just pick month-end reports, and I'll go into this broadcast group to show its properties in a minute. But since I already have one that's useful for my demo, I'll go ahead and add that. You can see that I added it to that group. And then I'm going to just go ahead and save that. I won't process this now, but you could process this if you wanted to, because I want to show you that concept of the group that this action is attached to. So let's exit out of there and look at broadcast group. And I just showed you month-end reports is what I added it to. So let's look at its properties. So this is my broadcast group called month-end reports. So I could attach any actions with views attached to them that are relevant to the month end, looking at data at the month end. There's multiple actions attached to this one, including that sales versus budget weeks to date action, and that group of month end reports is already attached to a schedule called monthly. If you wanted to attach it to one or more schedules, you could. I think this is sufficient. And there's kind of maybe more actions and multiple views than I would want to send out for this broadcast group alone, but I'll just leave this, leave things as I have them set up here so I can show you a processing of things. But let me first then look at the broadcast schedule. So again, actions, you attach views to actions, grouping them together. Broadcast groups, you can group together one or more multiple actions for processing at the same time. So again, I could process this right now interactively, or behind the scenes later, schedule it to process, let's say, part of a nightly process or other weekly process behind the scenes using a script or a task schedule. Or there's a program, I think it's part of the Stratum viewer application folder that is run. And there are some parameters that you can find in online help if you're an administrator that would tell you how to process things. So let's see if I can find that real quickly, and then I'll jump back to the let's see if I've got a scheduling tool parameters. So this topic here in help is a great help for someone who is taking a schedule or group or action and wanting to set up a schedule for processing it behind the scenes. But let me jump back. I was going to show you broadcast schedules really quick. So monthly is the one that this group is attached to. So let me go into that schedule. And here's that monthly schedule that was previously set up. So the properties, give it a name, description. You can have it locked so it can't be edited. There's an ID information down here, which is used when you're scheduling things, when you're implementing a scheduling and processing of a schedule. But here are the two groups that are attached to this schedule in particular. So let me, just as a final step, I know I'm going over time here a bit, so as a final step, I'll just go ahead and interactively process this and see if it processes in a timely manner. I can show you the email results. If not, I have some other previously scheduled items that were, let's see, monthly. Looks like it's already completed, so that's great. And I can see I've got an email here. I'll show you my email window. Let's see if that'll repopulate for me. Don't know if the email's been received yet. There may be a little lag time between the processing and the sending of the email. But I do have these other emails already. If you've got notifications set up to tell people something is processed, like an administrator, you want them to know that a group schedule action had processed, the process details would get attached to that email that comes through. The emails that are generated by that schedule and the actions attached to the groups would look something like this, where you've got, in my case, I've got a few links to few views. I could click on those links and go right into Stratum Viewer, or open the Excel file, and there would be tabs for each of these 3 views in this case. So it looks like even though the processing completed, I don't have the results coming through yet to my email. There might be a lag time because I'm on a Teams meeting right now, but I do have those examples in my my PowerPoint as well that shows you the processing notification as well as the end results for the people who were flagged as the recipients of those broadcast actions and their views that are attached to them. So I think actually that is everything that I wanted to cover for the demonstration purposes. Let me go to the last slide here and open things up for questions. Again, went through this kind of quickly, but if you have questions as you look at the recording and look through the slides again, you can send questions to this email or call us. There are more resources that you can find, recordings of this class. If you look on the Stratum website, for example, under resources, you can get to recordings of classes. You can also, for other general knowledge, look at the customer knowledge base, customer net knowledge base, which has links to articles about various Stratum Viewer and other features. The Sylvan YouTube channel has postings of Insight classes and other how-to and short videos for various features. There are some for that favorites and recents and the Stratum Glossary out there on that YouTube channel. And of course, there's product online help, which you can access at any point while you're using the application.